Shelly Jones, they, them, is a professor at a small college in upstate New York, where they teach classes in mythology, folklore, and writing. A Pushcart nominee and a Best Microfiction finalist, their speculative work has been published in FNSF, Apex, The Future Fire, and elsewhere. Shelly, over to you.
Thanks so much, Elaine. What I'm going to be reading from is a flash fiction called Elle, which was published in the most recent volume of If There's Anyone Left, which was published earlier this year. When the rain stopped, Elle buried their name in Mama's grave. They wrapped it in thick leaves and tied the package tight with stalks of dandelion and goldenrod, buttery petals still brimming with droplets of rain. The ground gasped as they threw the little parcel into the grave and turned away, hoping the name would be swallowed up forever. She knew what she wanted to name you before we even realized she was pregnant, Pops had said as they sat in the hospital. He sipped murky coffee from a styrofoam cup and kept watching the door, waiting for a doctor to update them. She told all the nurses your name before you were even out. It was a story Elle had heard many times, how the name had blossomed before her as she weeded, vines twisting up from the earth, splaying before her, spelling the name in a leafy filigree. Very special, Pops managed, and stared up at the flickering fluorescent lights of the waiting room. But Elle hadn't been certain if he meant that they were very special, or their mother, or perhaps the green stalks that had made their grand proclamation, cursing them, binding them to the name, before slinking back into the earth with a hiss. Elle hated the name and all its trappings, the burden of someone else weighing on them. They waited in silence until the doctor came in to express his regrets. It hasn't rained since your mother died. Pop stared out from the porch across the browning fields. The air was thick with crumbling earth, and Elle could feel grit between their toes, in their hair and teeth, wearing away at them. Coincidence, Elle shrugged. Your mother didn't believe in coincidences. She didn't believe in a lot of things, Elle thought bitterly, but swallowed the words. It had been weeks since the funeral. Elle had never been in the house with Pops for that long, without their mother's redirection or interruption. Every conversation was a contest, a battle to be won. He'd skewer them with grand observations, harsh opinions that Mama would have swatted away or smoothed over like a cat's tongue plying matted fur. The chard will survive the drought, Elle insisted, remembering another dry season when all that grew was chard and lima beans. Mama had frozen the greens and canned the buttery beans to pull out in the winter for soups. Making things last longer than they should was her specialty, Elle thought. Pops didn't say anything and stepped off the porch and out into the fields. Dust swallowed him as he walked until Elle could no longer see him in the distance, but only heard his sharp whistle. When Elle awoke, their old name was hanging from the doorknob. Dirt gathered along its edges and a spider dangled from its cracked face. Elle wondered if Pops had dug it back up, if he'd insist they wear it like the frilly communion dress they were forced to wear as a child, itchy lace and fake pearls choking them. Or had the name wriggled up out of the dirt and inched its way back to their room, searching for something familiar. For a moment, Elle could see themselves in the name, misshapen and bruised, and nearly reached toward it. But at the sound of the screen door banging, its hinges dry and achy, Elle's stomach turned. As they passed through the doorway, the name jolted, a tentacled vine lunging for them. Elle wrenched their wrist free, snapping the vine with a bitter pop, and headed downstairs. Pops poured them coffee and scattered the newspapers across the kitchen table. Dirt caked in his nail bed, and as he turned to the obituaries and the auction sales. It'll rain soon. There was a ring around the moon last night, Elle said, the words familiar yet ill-formed in their mouth. How often had the family said things like that? And yet now the phrase seemed so empty, like Mama's incessant apologies, or the other adages the family repeated without thinking, like, clear moon, frost soon, or perhaps even love you. Elle wondered what meaning was left in these words now that Mama was gone, or if they were hollow, the innards drained out, like when rain froze around rotted fruit and left a ghostly shell of an apple on the limb. That's what your Mama would say. Pops folded the newspaper and squeezed Elle's shoulder before heading outside. Elle could hear the name scraping at the walls of their room and Pop's piercing whistle lassoed around them as they cried. As Elle planted a late crop of onions, blisters sprouted along their thumb. They watched their blood wick up through the arid soil, the shriveled roots of a thistle absorbing them. Elle wondered if they should remain there forever, feeding the land with their body, like their parents had. Would their ghost coil in the old radiator in the kitchen, hiding in its inner recesses, the way a snake once did, searching for any warmth? Where had Mama's ghost found comfort? Perhaps tucked in the keyholes of the house, always stuck in between, never venturing to one side or the other. Elle jammed the bulbs into the earth, daring anything to grow. Thunder murmured in the distance as Elle stepped off the porch. They could hear Pop's whistle somewhere in the withering fields, but ignored it and kept on walking. The air was thick, and for a moment they felt as though they were stepping into Mama's arms again, the sweet musk of earth enveloping them. Elle looked up as lightning arced across the sky, a new name singeing ashen clouds, and it welled in their belly, taking root in them. They walked beyond the paint-chipped picket fence, and as they heard the screen door swing open, caught on the wind, its hinges screeching like an owl, the rain fell to the earth as though someone were holding them and could finally, at last, exhale. That's Elle. And for the giveaway, there's a possibility to win or get a copy of my poetry chapbook, which is called Of Weeds and Witches, which has lots of lots of natural imagery and lots of, weird magical things happening. So thank you very much.